Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Real Point of View. My name is Greg Morgan, and I am the Real Movie Guy. And joining me is Karen, the Movie Maven herself, Miss Karen D.
Hello.
Get that right. Um, so, ladies and gentlemen, we're at that situation where Christmas is around the corner. So, as the stations start playing Christmas music, and you're getting mad because they're playing Christmas music and not playing your favorite songs anymore, I have to go in there and say, Christmas music is some of my favorite songs. So I'm good.
I'm
I'm
good
good.
too.
Yeah.
I
So, there are other stations. So if you have to go to those other stations, by all means. But at the
from
same time,
Thanksgiving. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
oh, but all I was going to say, at the same time, the Christmas channels are wonderful. Now, I heard today that Jingle Bells was actually not written for Christmas. It was actually written for Thanksgiving.
It was.
It was because the sleigh bells ringing. Are you listening? And you going through the lands. It was, if you say, walking in winter wonderland was trying to get you to grandmother's house for the turkey.
Oh,
And in our
did not know
actuality,
that.
and the irony was, they say, well, we have turkey at Thanksgiving, we have turkey at Christmas too. Christmas hangouts, Christmas turkey, it's all. They say, well, it's a holiday song. Let's kind of put it toward Christmas, and all of a sudden, it's a Christmas song. So,
Well, from
um,
Thanksgiving to Christmas Day, the only music I play, I can play music in my office. The only music that I play is Christmas music. It's, instrumental, and then I have like my holiday playlist when for at home, and I have Google Play Music where I can listen to like the biggest Christmas hits or the oldies, Dean Martin or Perry Como or whatever, or Mariah Carey or Kelly Clarkson. And I really love it until Christmas Day, at which point I don't want to hear another note
all righty.
of Christmas music. I mean, until the day after Christmas. And then it's like, peace out until Thanksgiving Day next year. I don't
Yeah.
want to hear one note from a Christmas carol
And
until
I,
Thanksgiving Day next year.
and I know one of your favorite Christmas songs is from a short little claymation film called Hot Rod Coker and Joe. And I know that for a fact as one of our favorite songs.
Oh, lately, aye, Donner and Blitzen away, away. Yes.
Those are my hoofs, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
All right. Well, ironically, kind of like the music, where we've got music from, as Karen was mentioning, Perry Como, Nat King Cole kind of thing from way back in the day, and then music that's a little bit more modern, like she mentioned, Mariah Carey, and all the other artists that try to do songs in the modern day. And then we have those tweeners like Stevie Wonder. When he was younger, he had the younger songs, and as he got older, the older songs. So
And the
tonight's
songs
episode,
he wrote too.
like this Christmas, very
Right.
good
This
song.
Christmas or Someday at Christmas, which is one of my favorites.
It is. It is. And with that being said, ironically, that's what we're kind of talking about tonight about the films and movies. Some of the best movies that you'll ever see are Christmas movies, especially the Christmas movies of yesterday, yesteryear. But as we got older and as we get older, they haven't stopped making Christmas movies, right? And but are these Christmas movies holding up to as good as the Christmas movies were back in the day? I'll be honest with you, some of my favorite Christmas movies, and then we'll kind of briefly talk about them today. Um, Miracle on 34th Street. Now, that's a movie that it's such a good movie that they kept remaking it over and over and over again because the story is such a good, heartwarming story. But I still think the original movie was the best one, where little oh my God, Woodward, no, am I saying that right?
You mean
Natalie Woods.
Natalie?
There we go. Natalie Woods. Natalie Woods, great, great actress in her time. If anybody saw West Side Story, she played Maria. But in this movie, she's like 8 or 9 years old. And she's adorable in this film. And it just seems like the acting in the movie was so much better than some of the remakes. Maureen O'Hara is in this movie. I mean, it's a great film. So
John Payne.
John Payne. Oh yeah, John Payne, who was a dramatic actor. Usually was in cowboy movies, war movies, and here he is. I think he was an attorney. I think
Yep, he's
in this
playing the
movie,
attorney. He was the one who was defending
Santa
Santa
Claus.
Claus,
Right. So,
who was played by Edmund Gwynn.
it, and Karen knows this because A, she's done her research, but B, she actually likes this movie, right?
Oh, I think it's an excellent movie. I've always
So,
liked that movie.
so are the movies that have been more recent, have they lived up to the wonderment of the, classics like Miracle on 31st Street, like White Christmas, like The Bishop's Wife, uh, like A Christmas Carol? Now, there's so many different versions of A Christmas Carol, and some of them are called Scrooge. Bill Murray did a more recent version just called Scrooged, ED,
Mm-hmm.
which is a play off of that. What is her name? Vanessa Williams did a Scrooge rendition where she was Scrooge.
Yep.
So there's been a lot of different Scrooges, but to me, the best one was 1951 with Alistair Sims. One of the best ones, one of the more jovial ones, and to me, one of the more heartfelt ones. I actually watched this movie all year round. I've seen it probably 30 times, and it never loses its luster. Now, the movies that are out there today, Karen, are there any movies out there that think they're that good that wouldn't lose their luster?
Um, I don't know. I mean, that's definitely a debatable subject. I mean, to me, no, not really. I think there's a wide gulf between like Christmas movies that used to be made, especially during the golden age of Hollywood, and movies that have come out in the last like 30 years or so, even though some of them have become classics, like Christmas with the Cranks, for example, with Jamie Lee Curtis, or Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase.
Mm-hmm.
Those movies never grabbed me, and I mean, they're fine enough. I mean, they're slapsticky comedy or whatever, but I mean, for me, the gold standard for Christmas movies is one that you didn't mention, Gregory. It's A Wonderful Life, with Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed, directed by Frank Capra. That's the gold standard for Christmas movies, because it's just, and this is a movie that it has been remade in different ways, kind of more likely in the guise of a TV movie. There are many remakes or many borrowings of that story for Christmas movies shown on television. I can't recall off the top of my head a new, like, widescreen release version of It's a Wonderful Life.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just that, it's also the movies you mentioned, like Miracle on 34th Street and White Christmas and A Christmas Carol. And for me, like, my favorite version of A Christmas Carol is not it. I love the Reginald Owen one. I love the Reginald Owen one, which from the 1930s.
Right,
Then there's the Alistair Sim one from 1951, excellent. And that's probably my favorite. But then, like, my really all-time favorite is the one with Albert Finney, the musical Scrooge.
Mm-hmm.
Just amazing. And that was made in 1970. And Albert Finney just looked so much like Scrooge. He really did. The way that because I mean, he was a relatively young man when he did that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not a singer. He's not musical at all, but you would never know that from the way in which, he would sort of talk through he would sort of talk sing,
Mm-hmm.
which was fine because it fit right in with the character. And his, the way in which he sort of made Scrooge look like sort of like this kind of sad man, but even though he was like the meanest SOB to ever walk the face of the whatever London, he managed to get that across. And the music was also really good too. The way in which they just sort of made fun of him, like the "Thank You Very Much" song when during the Christmas Future part where the whole town was celebrating because he was dead, and they were like, "Thank you very much. That's the nicest thing that anyone's ever done for me."
Yeah.
Because now we don't have to pay these debts anymore, and we don't have to be hounded by him, and he was so mean anyway, and now we got his clothes and his house. We can open a museum and maybe have a grocery store or all kinds of things. Yeah, it was just great. I just love that movie, and I was thinking about like the movies that are out now related to Christmas. There's the Nutcracker Prince and the Four Realms, or Nutcracker in the Four Realms, which, I mean, that was the movie I was interested in seeing, mainly because Misty Copeland has a featured turn in that where she's dancing. And I've never seen her dance in person, so I would like to see it. But I didn't make it there. That wasn't quite enough to get me to the theater, because really it's going to literally take an act of Congress to get me into theaters these days. But the reviews of that particular movie have not been good.
Right.
So I don't think that's going to rise to the level. And frankly, when I'm looking at the movies that are, and then there's yet another remake of The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, this time in an animated form. And I have to say that I have not seen this movie yet. I'm not rushing to see this movie because I am of the firm opinion that they did it right the first time. The half-hour special that Dr. Seuss was a consultant. He was the consultant who helped CBS develop this movie, along with Patty Freeling that did the animation. That is the one. They got it right the first time.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one.
The version with Jim Carrey, to me, was an abomination. It was, and I know Ron Howard directed it, and this is not a good film for him. He didn't do a good job on this. It was just like, this is what happens when you can have too much money, and money really can't buy you a good movie sometimes. Right. And Grinch Who Stole Christmas with Jim Carrey, that live action version, is a classic example of what happens when you have all the money in the world, but you don't have any heart. You need the stories about heart. It's a story about connecting. There was no connection in this movie. It was just a lot of special effects, these, sort of stock characters, and, makeup, and I'm like, not interested. But the cartoon, the half-hour cartoon with, little Cindy Lou Who was no more than 2, and, and the Grinch and his little dog Max, who, would look at him with these puppy eyes, but then help him do all this horrible stuff. I mean, that's the movie. That's
the true accessor.
Right, a true enabler. I mean, this is totally a codependent relationship. But yeah, that's the movie. So, and now there's this animated, the new animated version of the movie that I think is still in the theaters. And I'm like, well, maybe they're avoiding some of the pitfalls of the Ron Howard version, but not enough. It's like, nah, they still did it right the first time. I will stream The Grinch Who Stole Christmas when I want to see it without the nearly 20 minutes of commercial breaks that happens when CBS airs it. And I'm happy with that. I don't need anything else. When I look at the movies that are out, especially today, the movies that I'm most interested in going to the movies to see have absolutely nothing to do with Christmas. I want to see Widows. I want to see Mary Queen of Scots. I want to see Spider-Verse.
I do too.
Those are 3 movies that I want to see They have absolutely nothing to do with Christmas.
That's an animated feature that I really want to see in Spider-Verse.
It looks
It
adorable.
looks great. It looks great. I've seen different trailers and they're quirky. And I like that.
Yes, I know. I like, Miles Morales, and and then the other guy, the grown is like, I'm the realist. I mean, it's just the trailers look. I hope it's at least as good as the trailers, because the trailers look terrific. But
Yeah.
and even like Clint Eastwood just came out with a new movie
I
called
know. The mole,
The Mule.
the mule, yeah. Yeah, drug mule thing. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, that looks interesting. But the Grinch and the Nutcracker, that didn't get me into the theater. Sorry, no.
And I'll let you know, Widow's pretty decent.
Okay. I
And
mean,
then
it looked good. And that was directed by Steve McQueen.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
So the same director who won the
Equalizer.
Oscar for 12 Years a Slave.
And the Equalizer. Yep.
And he also did the Equalizer. So yeah. So that stuff I'm interested in, but not but yeah, and I guess so. To me, that leads us into why, if we can agree that there are differences between what are Christmas movies these days versus what were Christmas movies, say, made during the golden age of Hollywood. What if you think that's true, and I think I do hear you saying that, what are the differences and why have they come about?
Well, you know what? There are a lot of actors today, people who are trying to make their way, people who are trying to um, do their best to portray whatever the characters are, and there are some fine movies out there. I think for whatever reason, back in the day, um, uh, to not sound crass, but acting was a little bit more, I don't know, dramatic, in the sense that I felt like I could truly understand what was being portrayed. Sometimes movies get a little clouded anymore, and the true theme of what you're trying to express gets lost. And I don't think I was ever lost in those other movies that I aforementioned. Not lost at all. Pretty clear conceptually, pretty clear where it was going, but you were still on the journey. Now the journey is muddled. The journey is not as clear, and you're not quite sure all the time where you're going with it. And then I think these are good movies. I guess at some point you need to be introduced to the world as an actor or actress. And seemed to be in those movies, even me mentioning Natalie Wood, for example, she was introduced to us, but she was introduced to us at a young age. And we're seeing how good an actress she was even then.
Mm-hmm.
These days, not as so much. The kids are not the focus in these movies, many of them. It's the adults. And even though she was in the middle of that, and I know it was an adult kind of thing, they never lost fact that she was important.
Mm-hmm.
And they made her important, especially at certain points. She was very poignant to the whole getting together of the parent with the lawyer, with Saint Nick and all that stuff. It was very necessary. And then a lot of these movies, the kids are in them, but they're not focally, and they're not the ones that are causing any. They're not what do they call it? They're not the catalyst like they should be. So I think that loses some of the essence of the true holiday Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
But with that being said, if you can find a story that's quirky, fun, and exciting and interesting, then maybe that happens a little bit. There was a movie that came out recently, but it was more of a love story, but it was still a Christmas movie, and that was Love Actually.
Oh, I did love that movie.
It's a great
I
movie.
forgot about that one too.
Great movie. Came out in 2003.
Yeah.
And,
Awesome. Awesome.
relatively
Awesome.
recent.
Awesome.
Great movie. And the thing about it was it had different sections, but they found a
Mm-hmm.
way to make all those sections connect.
Yep.
And it was like a community neighborhood of actions and reactions and concepts. And conceptually, all of it led to love, 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 love.
Mm-hmm.
In a Christmassy kind of festive era, time of year. So that was a really good movie. And I found a movie that I thought was fun and quirky. I'm not going to say it was the best movie on the earth, and I wasn't say it was acted just the best, but the conceptual essence of the story was fun. We take everything so seriously anymore. But this movie wanted you to not take it seriously. So I think the critics were a little harsh when it came to the movie, but it was a movie that didn't want you to take it seriously. They wanted to bring the kid back in you as an adult, though. So Fred Claus was introduced to the world.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a fun, silly movie about how things could be if Santa Claus had a brother. Nobody's thinking about those kind of things. So at least they thought out the box a little bit. And so that's what made the movie fun. But what happened to bringing the fun back? What happened to bringing out a true essence of cleverness? Another good movie, which was probably even a better movie, I think, than Fred Claus, was Elf.
I was just thinking, I'm not doing the one that to me is about the best of the modern movies that has come out, and along it is Will Ferrell in Elf. That's a really well done movie. It's so sweet, and it's a great story, and Will Ferrell is great in that movie playing the elf. He's awesome. So yeah, I would put that as like one of the best of the modern movies. I forgot to mention that, and Love Actually. I would say those are the two, but I'm hard pressed to think of anything else that just rises to the level of those particular movies.
Right, and that's the irony. We see all these other different movies that are out there, and Hallmark makes a myriad of them.
So they got a million of them. Same story, different actors.
And that's the problem. There's no growth. There's no thinking outside the box. The box is neatly packed and neatly wrapped for almost all these Hallmark movies. Now, don't get me wrong, Hallmark's trying, I guess, and the movies aren't bad. They're just not great, and they're not exciting, and they kind of leave you kind of, oh, okay, that was all right, yeah.
Oh, great. And
I'd rather read a Hallmark card than watch the movies. And then,
well, Lifetime's doing them now too.
Lifetime too, and I think those networks, they've already got you a little bit with the subject matter,
Right.
But now let's get still more exciting films for these studios. But Elf was an exception. Will Ferrell makes it's so funny. We grew up in excuse me. Elves are little people. Little people. He made you think he was little.
He really did do that.
I was like, I lost my initial inhibition. Like, oh my God, he's giant. I lost all that right away. It took me only a minute or two to realize that this was an elf. This guy was Santa's like he lost one of his better ones, being in this big city by accident. This elf was like, he was so blissful. I couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And you started to believe. You started to believe the people around him as they started to believe. I mean, it was a great notion. It was thinking out the box, as I alluded to before, and it brought back the whimsy and fun of Christmas movies again.
And that's probably the best strength of that movie. It was whimsical and at that point in time, a pretty unexpected way. And it was really due, to the director of the movie, whose name I can't recall off the top of my head, but also Will Ferrell just really made that role. And you really felt for him. And it was very poignant too. It brought a tear to my eye, watching that. And Love Actually just had me crying all over the place.
expressions of love during the holiday season is important for all of us, I think. And those two movies, especially, give you just heartfelt everything. And it also gives you the sense of hope and promise. And if the movies are going to do that, then yeah, they'll probably be better. But we're not getting that. We're getting a lot of, it's almost like the boy bands, a lot of cookie cutter bands. We're getting cookie cutter movies. And that's killing us. Those of us who are so involved in cinema dealing with this time of year.
But
Um,
I think the kind of, I mean, the issue in terms of like to me, just a general absence of great, specifically Christmas type movies, I think also reflects just our sort of, I mean, I think just a general malaise with Christmas, period, because Christmas really has become so commercial and it's so stressful and it's so just you got to hurry up and buy this stuff, you got to hurry up and we need the tree, yeah, let's put up the tree again, okay, and now yeah, we got to cook the dinner again, oh yeah, the relatives are coming, I got to get the house ready, blah blah, but nothing about like, I mean, it's not like people are rushing around to focus on the actual spiritual reason that Christmas was created. They're rushing around to meet all of these societal obligations that come with the secular holiday of Christmas. And it just gets tiring. I mean, you're exhausted. And so I think like It's a Wonderful Life was 1941, I believe.
approximately, yeah.
And that was just I mean, at that point in time, I mean, the United States was at war or about to go to war. And I mean, it didn't do that well at the box office. It did not do well at all at the box office. It was sort of like one of those, it was a sleeper hit because it just didn't do well at the box. And then somehow, and I think it was close to being pulled from the theaters when, it sort of got a little, almost like a second win. And then it just became this huge, it's like, oh, people just love this movie. And it was an amazing movie. But the whole point of this movie and why it stood the test of time is that It's a Wonderful Life actually kind of deals with this malaise. It deals with the commercialization of Christmas and sort of, this acquisition of, like life doesn't mean anything unless you're acquiring material things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And unless you've achieved a certain amount of material acquisition, then you're not worth very much. You're not a man. You're not a good father. You're not, all of these things, when that was not what held that family together. I mean, it helped. It's not like you want to be starving, but Jimmy Stewart's character, George, was, literally had to learn that. And that, I mean, that movie still makes me cry, and I could pretty much quote the dialogue from the beginning all the way to the end. But that it's just this interesting sort of exploration in the way that I think only Frank Capra could pull off about how somebody sort of finds his way back to the spiritual and emotional things that truly make us human and truly make us find the joy in living.
Mm-hmm.
And it just didn't have that much to do with money. It had to do, money was the side hustle. Money was the distraction.
But also, too, it goes with the essence of what true wealth is. And
Right.
wealth was not monetary. It was soul and as you alluded to, humanity coming together. That's where the true wealth was, and that's what they eventually found out, that the wealth was all around them, within themselves, each other coming together to each other. And um, Barrymore's wealth
Lionel
was
Barrymore, right?
I can't think of his name.
Lionel Barrymore?
Potter.
Oh, yes, he was Mr. Potter. He was just Mr. Potter.
Mr. Potter's essence of what wealth was monetary wealth, and putting that over George's head throughout the whole first part of the film. And George realizing that as he scurries, as he tries so hard to do this as the currency exchanger or whatever their I can't think of, that's not their business. It was
They was savings and loans.
Savings and loan. There you go. Thank you. Their savings and loan is being tested and crumbling around them. Well, that wasn't it. And his uncle and other family members indirectly were trying to get him to understand there's more. George, don't worry about this. Don't worry about that. We'll come back and things will be different. You'll see. And George couldn't get around early on that
Right.
without that money, we're dead. We're doomed. Without this, we're doomed. And yet, when he goes back with the angel, he realizes that, your whole life wasn't like this. You've done all the things that gave you wealth over time, wealth in the community, wealth in your family. And that's what that's really about.
But it didn't happen in the way in which he wanted it to. Like if he
Exactly.
had been able to travel the way, he desperately wanted to travel. And, and that to me was just a very poignant part of the story, because we all, and to me, this is where this movie just really just is sort of writ large, and again stands the test of time, for lack of a better way of characterizing it. But it's like, the movie starts out with these two voices representing two angels talking. One is Clarence, who's trying to get his wings, and then there's the other angel who's like the senior, like his mentor angel. And they're like, and the mentor angel's like, well, I have this story, I need to tell you the story about George, and he starts out with George is in trouble, and Clarence is like, oh, why? Well, he thinks, his life isn't worth very much, and, to paraphrase, and I really need you to go down there and help him. And if you can help him, then you can get your wings. So, you set up this problem. You've got George who's in trouble. We have no idea who George is. And then you've got Clarence who needs help too. And it's like, oh, well, okay. But what was interesting about the conversation is just like this, his life had already been written out. And the angel says, George, he never leaves Bedford Falls. And it's like, wow. So to have your life kind of summarized like that, it's just, it's poignant, but also just a little like, wow, this happens with all of our lives have a trajectory, a direction. There are things that we think we want to do that we'll never get to do, things we don't want to do that we're going to have to do. And, and things that we want to do that we actually get the chance to do. But it's like, like the script, the script has already been written. It's already there from the beginning, from the day you're born until the day that you pass on. There's something written about about the direction of your life. And there was something written about the direction of George's life. And he had these lessons to learn, and it had really nothing to do with leaving. He thought the only way to learn the lessons was by leaving Bedford Falls. It's like, nah, not really. And we've had that kind of story before, like with the Wizard of Oz. Dorothy really, she's like, I really need to get the crap out of Kansas, because this place is bringing me down. And then she's like, I want to go home. I want to go home. And if I ever go looking for my heart's desire, if I ever go looking for my heart's desire again, I won't look any farther than my own backyard, So we've seen that sort of theme again, and we kind of have a similar theme with George, with George and his family. Why do we have all these children? And then it's like, then he loses the children, and he's like, oh, I just need my children back, or he thinks he's lost the children. Well, he wanted his children back, but at one point he was like, why do we have all these children? All they do is, eat food, and they need these clothes. And why do we have this big house? And it's so drafty. And you know, um, these are things to me. This theme about gratitude, and also what do you want your life to be like, and also, but really like expressing gratitude for the life that you actually have.
Mm-hmm.
Life really, these are the kinds of lessons and themes that we keep coming back to again because we need to learn them again. And I think that It's a Wonderful Life is just a really beautifully done story that, captures those themes. And I'm just, it's harder to find more modern movies that do that as beautifully. I'm just kind of cringing for the day when somebody decides to remake It's a Wonderful Life. It's like, please don't. Please don't.
I think it's in the works.
Great.
Sorry. But buzzkill. Okay. Well, here's a Christmas movie that somebody said, this is a really good Christmas movie, one of my favorites. I said, what's that? They said Die Hard. And I thought about it. And I thought, I actually did like that movie.
Me
And
too. The first one was awesome.
It was. Bruce Willis was stellar.
My favorite was Alan Rickman.
And he was stellar also. If you got a good hero, you got to have a good villain.
He was awesome as a villain. Oh my God.
Now, what was interesting to me too is talking about Christmas theme and all these things. Here's a guy who didn't know his worth until he was in a situation. And everyone, including his wife, didn't give him a lot of credit and a lot of credence early on because of the job that he had. Well, this is a police officer coming to this party, invited, not necessarily, kind of, sort of.
We're putting up with him.
And so he's kind of out of place with this aristocracy that's going to be around him and all this stuff. And then something horrible happens. And now he's thrust into being not just trying to help, but his self-worth, his self-confidence keeps building and building and building and building as this movie goes on. And you see him at his best in trying to be helpful, but also being clever, also being exuberant, also being a little whimsical in his efforts to try to save, well, I don't know, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, pretty much.
So yeah, it actually gives you a lot of spirit in this film. So I can see it as a this person telling me, hey, that was a great Christmas movie. I mean, I know about all this other stuff, but and again, a modern day Christmas movie. Now that was in the 80s when that came out, the late 80s, but
right.
It was a really good movie. And so, yeah, it's, again, thinking out the box. It's snowing, it's Christmas, all these things are going on. It's a Christmas party and all this is great. But just because they're having that don't mean everything's great.
Right.
And just because you're there doesn't mean that you are less than. And he proved that he was not less than in this film. And he wasn't trying to. It just came out because that's who he truly was. Again, a lot of wealth, not rich, but wealthy.
Right. Right.
Well, Karen, I think we're getting close to that time. Any other movies you want to just kind of throw out there that might be good for our viewers to see, or that they may haven't seen? Because a lot of the movies that we were talking about, people haven't seen because they're a lot older than some people realize, and maybe they're not going back in time, to see some really good movies.
Well, I mean, in terms of, I would definitely check out It's a Wonderful Life if possible. To me, it's not Christmas unless you see at least either Alastair Sims or Albert Finney or Reginald Owen as Scrooge, or even the Bill Murray Scrooge. It was
pretty decent.
It was pretty decent. And I like the way in which they sort of like made him a television executive or a television anchor, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
that was nice. So I like that. But like I said, in terms of like this Christmas, I want to see the Spider-Verse, and I want to see Mary Queen of Scots. That just sounds the backstory between Elizabeth and Mary, and
Huge.
how Elizabeth becomes like the longest reigning monarch in English history with the longest period of peace. A woman did that, not the men kings. The woman queen did that, and how she actually was in a stronger position by not having a spouse and a child than she would have been if she did. And that sort of the way in which she and Mary start out as friends and become these enemies. Fascinating.
I think they should have renamed it. I think they should have renamed it to just Fierce, because that's all that's going on in this movie.
It is totally
and yet testosterone doesn't seem like a strange word right now in that film.
It's totally fierce. So that's the stuff that I want to see. But I'll break out my iPad or my Chromecast or whatever, and I'll watch How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the original cartoon without the commercial breaks. I'll watch It's a Wonderful Life. I'll watch, like I said, It's a Christmas Carol, and and I'll probably watch It's Christmas Charlie Brown, or the Charlie Brown cartoon about the Christmas tree.
The broken Christmas tree with one ornament.
Yeah. And I'll watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and Santa Claus is Coming to Town, the Patty Freeling specials, the Santa Claus is Coming to Town with Fred Astaire, and maybe even The Year Without a Santa Claus with Shirley Booth. I mean, they had wonderful actors in these older. That's part of what made them so good, was that they got top-notch actors. These, like Jimmy Stewart was at the top of his game in 1941. So.
Yeah, indeed.
It wasn't like, oh well, let's just grab somebody who really needs the job. They got great actors.
They did.
Donna Reed was considered quite a good actress in her day.
And that's another thing with these older films. A lot of these older films, these were very, very seasoned actors and actresses.
Yeah.
And even the younger generation in those films had been in a myriad of films or on stage quite a bit. So there was a little bit better, seemingly, acting chops back in the day, and a lot more believable. And that's the thing. You want to be taken away and be a part because of what this journey is shared. And that's where we miss a lot of things, because it's not a shared journey.
Right. And maybe I'll watch Elf again, because I've got, I have that in my collection. I may just break that out and just.
As do I. Well, we're getting beside ourselves again. Thanks again for watching us here on A Real Point of View. Check out all the other shows that we have in our archive on our YouTube channel, which is also A Real Point of View. Thanks again for watching. And Karen, thanks for hanging out as always. Love you and appreciate you for that. And
right back at you.
And we're leaving to just say, just keep it real. REEL. Take care, everybody. Take care. Have a good night.
Good night.
Happy holidays.